They say you always remember the moment the truth starts to crack through the surface. For me, it was somewhere between the second glass of Pinot Grigio and the opening chords of the string quartet's rendition of Claire de Lune. My name is Nomi Lachlan. I'm 41, recently widowed, and the only daughter of Vivian Lachlan, the woman half this room calls visionary, and the other half wouldn't dare call anything at all. Tonight was supposed to be about my father, the man whose quiet generosity built the Lachlan Foundation into a beacon of charity. But it only took one sentence from my 13-year-old son to tell me something else was happening. Mom, Silas whispered, tugging gently on the sleeve of my dress. They're signing you out tonight. I blinked, disoriented by the hush of candlelight and the hum of 100 well-dressed guests gliding across the ballroom floor. What do you mean? I asked, bending toward him, trying to keep my voice light. It's just a gala. His eyes didn't waver. It's not. I wanted to laugh it off. He'd always been perceptive, too perceptive for someone his age, but this felt different. His voice wasn't alarmed. It was resigned, like he'd already pieced something together and was just waiting for me to catch up. Then I saw it, my name, or rather the absence of it. On the printed program beside each place setting, "Welcome to the 25th Annual Lachlan Gala honoring Frederick Lachlan's legacy," there were bios of the board, the speakers, the special guests. Declan, my brother, took up an entire column with a black and white portrait I hadn't seen before. My name was missing. So was any mention of the work I'd poured into this organization for the past 7 years. Nomi Lachlan, who kept the foundation alive after our father's stroke, who wrote the grant proposals and fielded the press and kept the donor dinners from imploding, erased with quiet precision. At the head table, my name card had been replaced. A donor sat in my seat. My new place was tucked against the wall beside the AV booth. I hadn't been asked to speak. I hadn't even been asked to help plan the program this year. Silas leaned in again. They think you won't make a scene. That's why they're doing it now. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a tribute. It was a transition, and I wasn't supposed to be part of what came next. I grew up in a house where image was everything and silence was currency. In the Lachlan family, we didn't raise our voices. We straightened our shoulders, adjusted the pearls, and said, "Thank you," even when the knife was still in our back. My mother, Vivian Lachlan, never needed to shout to control a room. She just had to glance. And that glance could freeze water. She ran the family the way she ran the Lachlan Foundation, with an iron will wrapped in silk. Emotions were theatrical. Vulnerability was weakness. Even as a child, I understood that tears earned you distance, not comfort. My father, Frederick Lachlan, was the only one who gave softness a home. He believed in integrity, not presentation. While my mother dressed pain in pressed linen and matching lipstick, my father listened with quiet eyes and calloused hands. But even he couldn't balance the scales completely. When he passed, I was the one who stayed. The one who organized the files, returned the donor calls, kept the staff from panicking. The one who kept the foundation breathing. Still, I knew my place. When I married Jeremy, a high school English teacher with a crooked smile and a heart that belonged to public service, my mother smiled through it like it was a phase. "He's kind," she said, which in Vivian speak meant he won't advance us. He wasn't from money, didn't wear tailored suits, and didn't talk real estate at fundraisers. But he saw me. And that counted for something. After Jeremy died, I should have had time to fall apart. But grief didn't excuse neglect, not in my mother's world. Within a month, she was calling again, asking for help with event logistics budgets, a donor dinner that couldn't possibly be postponed. I said yes, like I always had. When she named me co-trustee of the foundation, I knew it wasn't out of respect. It was insurance. I was the widow, the dutiful daughter, the one who wouldn't make waves. People like continuity, she said, like my grief was a branding opportunity. Then Declan came home. After a decade in Singapore, most of which we'd spent apart, he returned with a custom suit, a polished accent, and a TED Talk about innovating legacy. Within weeks, Mom had him on brochures in board meetings, sitting beside her at press conferences like a golden prince returned. Meanwhile, I was still handling payroll, writing thank you notes, organizing the archive room by myself on weekends. Declan got applause. I got quiet emails at 2 a.m. marked urgent, but I told myself it didn't matter. We were building something bigger than ego. My father's name still meant something. The work still mattered. I just hadn't realized how easy it was for them to take it all and make it look elegant. The stage lights dimmed just enough to signal the next round of speeches, and I instinctively smoothed the skirt of my dress, waiting for the nod that never came. I wasn't on the list. The MC, a polished young man from our PR firm, skipped straight to. And now please welcome Declan Lachlan, representing the next chapter of the Lachlan Foundation. Applause rippled across the ballroom like clockwork. I clapped 2 hands. Slow eyes searching the program again as if maybe I'd just missed it. But no, my name wasn't there. Not in the acknowledgments, not in the trustee list, not even as a courtesy mention, just Declan front and center. Vivian had seen the final draft. I'd asked her twice. She'd waved me off. Just formatting. It's being finalized. Now I knew what she'd meant. Declan took the mic with that breezy confidence he'd always worn like a tailored suit. Tonight isn't just about honoring the past. He began his voice deep and practiced. It's about modernizing legacy, about embracing leadership that meets the moment. A few people nodded. Someone at a nearby table murmured, "Well said." I looked around. Silas was no longer beside me. Across the room, I spotted Nako, 7 years old, dimpled and eager, perched on my mother's lap, hands full of petit fours. She was whispering something to him with a smile that made my stomach twist. He beamed utterly at ease. I stood slowly and made my way to the nearest exit. Upstairs, near the old foundation offices, I found Silas leaning against the wall, phone in hand, face pale. "I didn't want you to panic," he said, slipping the screen toward me, "but I needed to show you this before they lock everything down." It was an internal memo to tonight's board meeting agenda. Halfway down the document, under proposed restructure of foundation trusteeship, my name had been removed. Declan's was listed as the sole executive trustee. My hands went cold. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He hesitated. I might have guessed the Wi-Fi password and logged into the admin portal, he said, like it was just another homework assignment. It wasn't hard. They left it open backstage. I stared at the screen, at the soft-lit hallway, at my son, who saw it all more clearly than I had. Footsteps approached. My cousin Emma, a junior board member who'd mostly kept to herself since arriving, rounded the corner and froze when she saw us. I met her eyes. "Is this real?" I asked. Emma hesitated, then gave the smallest of nods. They said it would be best if it all happened tonight. Clean. Quiet. They're already in the back room with the documents. For a second, I couldn't move. I'd always known my mother didn't believe in confrontation. She believed in presentation. She didn't make power plays. She staged them. And tonight, it wasn't a mistake. It was a coronation. And I wasn't just forgotten. I was being removed. I should have asked more questions when Silas mentioned he'd been reaching out. I assumed he meant a friend from school or maybe one of Jeremy's old colleagues. I didn't expect the name he whispered next. Aunt Marisol, I messaged her 3 weeks ago. The breath caught in my throat. She answered, "Marisol Lachlan." My father's youngest sister hadn't been invited to a family event in nearly 20 years. The official version was that she'd moved to Vermont after a disagreement about family funds. The truth, as I'd learned in hushed fragments over the years, was messier. She'd challenged my mother's control over their parents' estate after their passing. And Vivian, predictably, had erased her without a trace. Photos removed, names struck from trust documents. Family emails filtered to spam. Growing up, I was warned she was unstable and emotional. Now I was beginning to understand that in our family, those words were just synonyms for inconvenient. Silas led me through the rear hallway of the ballroom toward the garden. She said if you ever needed her, really needed her, I could text this number. He handed me the phone with the open thread. "Tell your mother she's not crazy. Tell her I know what it feels like." Marisol stood near the fountain in the garden, wrapped in a dark green shawl, her silver hair swept back in a loose braid. Her presence was quiet but grounded, like she knew exactly how this would unfold. I hadn't seen her since I was a teenager, but I recognized her instantly. "Know me," she said softly, pulling me into a brief, steady hug. "You look just like your father when he was tired." I didn't know Silas had reached out. He's smart, smarter than I was at his age. We sat on a bench beneath the arbor, the murmur of the Gala behind us, like distant thunder. Marisol didn't waste time. Vivian doesn't confront. She orchestrates. She lays the table, arranges the lighting, and lets the knife sit there gleaming until someone else picks it up. That's her genius. I swallowed hard. She's already drafted the documents. My name's off the trust. Declan takes full control. Marisol nodded. She did the same to me. At a baptism, of all things. I showed up thinking I'd be asked to give a reading. Instead, she stood before the family and announced a realignment of our grandmother's estate. Said it was for efficiency. I hadn't even known the papers were signed. The room clapped. I was erased in real time. I sat stunned, breath fogging in the night air. She thinks I won't fight. She knows you won't make a scene. That's why it's tonight, with donors, speeches, photographers. She's betting on your silence. Behind us, the ballroom windows glowed gold. The foundation staff moved like dancers, weaving among board members. "They're collecting signatures right now," Marisol added. I saw Declan in the side hall with a leather folder. "It's already happening." My stomach turned. "You can walk away," she said gently. "But if you do, they write the ending." I looked toward the ballroom doors. I'd never been the one to interrupt. Never the one to raise my voice or stop the music. But maybe this wasn't about shouting. Maybe it was about showing up in the room they hoped I'd avoid and refusing to leave quietly. The hallway behind the ballroom smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive perfume. It was the wing where real decisions were made away from the chandeliers and donor applause. I walked with a purpose I hadn't felt in years, heels muted against the runner rug heart pounding like it had something to prove. A mahogany door stood ajar at the end of the corridor. The light spilling out was soft and warm, deceptively inviting. I paused for only a second before pushing it open. Inside the room hummed with quiet conversation and clinking glasses. 8 people sat around the long conference table, board members, 2 senior staffers, and a man I recognized only vaguely from legal correspondence. Leather-bound folders lay open in front of them, each with a pen placed just so. On the wall behind them, the Lachlan Foundation crest gleamed in silver leaf. The lawyer stood near the head of the table, mid-sentence. "And with this amendment, the Foundation ensures continuity and clarity of vision. Declan brings energy and international expertise that aligns with our growth strategy." He didn't see me at first. No one did. I cleared my throat. The sound cut through the air like glass. All heads turned. The lawyer blinked. "Oh, know me." "Yes," I said, stepping forward. "I'd like to see the documents you're discussing." There was a pause, that tight-lipped kind of silence that means people are calculating how much you already know. The lawyer glanced at Declan, who sat at the end of the table, casual but tense. "These are internal proposals," the lawyer began. "I'm still a co-trustee. Show me." Reluctantly, he slid one of the folders across the table. I opened it, hand steady, breath shallow. There it was, amendment to trust structure, followed by a list of approvals. My name was gone. Declan's was listed as executive trustee. But it wasn't just that. I scanned the page, then again, more slowly. One of the listed votes belonged to Thomas Greer, my father's old friend and longtime board member. He'd passed away last spring. I looked up, locking eyes with the lawyer. "This signature is forged. Thomas Greer died 6 months ago." A silence fell that no one dared break. Then I heard the click of heels. My mother entered like she was arriving at a gala entrance, not a private ambush. "It's time, darling," she said smoothly, as if offering a coat. "You've been through so much. Let us carry this forward for you." The room waited for my answer. My voice was gone. Rage, shame, grief. It all tangled into one long pause. Then the door creaked again. Silas stepped in, shoulders squared. You don't get to erase her. And just like that, the room shifted. I found my footing again. They had expected me alone, but I wasn't. For a second, no one moved. Vivian stood still in the doorway, her smile, tight eyes locked on Silas, like he was a smudge on polished glass. The lawyer cleared his throat, probably preparing to recover the room when Silas raised his phone and tapped the screen. Before anyone signs anything, he said, "Voice steady, you should hear what they said about my mom." He pressed play. The audio wasn't perfect, muffled in spots, but the voices were unmistakable. Vivian, cool and amused. She's always been fragile. That's the word to use. Fragile sounds kinder than unfit. Then Declan laughing. She won't fight. That's why it'll work. More shuffling. A pause. Then Vivian again, warmer this time. People admire her grief. Let them. We'll thank her publicly. And quietly, we'll move on. A weight settled in the room. The lawyer's jaw twitched. A few board members shifted in their chairs, pretending to study their folders like the paper held moral distance. I stepped forward. I wasn't shaking. Not anymore. You underestimated me? I said, voice calm, almost quiet. You thought I wouldn't fight because I haven't before. That was your mistake. I looked directly at my mother. You dressed this up in language about leadership and legacy, but it's manipulation. You tried to use my husband's death and my silence as leverage. Vivian's smile faltered for the first time all night. I'm calling for a legal injunction to halt any amendments to the trust. I continued, effective immediately. Declan pushed back in his chair. Nomi, don't be dramatic. This is a family matter. We can resolve this with dignity. Then you shouldn't have falsified a vote from a dead board member, I replied evenly. Or laughed about how easy it would be to erase me in a side hallway. Silas still held the phone, the screen glowing between us like a lantern. Behind us, the door creaked open again. A soft voice asked, Is this a bad time? It was Evelyn Markham, a longtime donor, one of my father's oldest supporters. She glanced at the scene, then at the phone in Silas's hand, then at me. I heard something in the hall. Is that recording real? I nodded. Then you've got a problem, Vivienne. Her tone wasn't cruel. It was factual, the way a doctor might deliver a difficult diagnosis. She turned and walked briskly back toward the ballroom. Moments later, murmurs began to ripple down the hallway. The kind of shift you feel in the air before a storm. I turned to Silas and lowered the phone. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine with quiet fire. They were never going to stop, not unless someone made them. No one signed anything that night. The pens stayed capped. The leather folders were quietly packed away. And for the first time in decades, my mother didn't have the last word. The house felt different without the Gala noise humming behind its walls. After the confrontation, after the boardroom dissolved in stunned silence, I didn't go home. I didn't go back to the ballroom either. I walked straight to my father's old office on the second floor of the main house, a place no one had really touched since he passed. It still smelled faintly of leather and pine like his aftershave. His desk sat beneath the window, layered with dust but untouched, as though time had simply paused. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe a file, maybe proof that I hadn't imagined his quiet faith in me. Instead, I found a letter. Tucked into a leather-bound planner dated 6 months before his stroke, the envelope was marked only with my name. The handwriting was his. Careful, slanted, deliberate. Nomi. If you're reading this, something shifted. You were always the one who saw the work that needed to be done, not the spotlight. That's your strength. But in this family that often gets mistaken for weakness, I want you to know that the foundation was never about image, not to me. It belongs to the ones who do the work, not the ones who seek the credit. Protect it, shape it, and when the time comes, lead it. Love, Dad. I didn't cry, not then. I just sat in the old leather chair and let the words settle into my spine like armor. The next morning, I called Marisol. She didn't hesitate. I'm in, she said before I even finished explaining. Your father would have been proud of you, Nomi. He always was. He just never learned how to say it out loud. Together we began drafting the framework for a new fund under the Foundation's umbrella. A restricted fund named in my father's honor, dedicated to grassroots leaders, the kind of people my father once mentored in private, while the Foundation spotlight stayed elsewhere. We called it the Frederick Laughlin Trust for Quiet Impact. I filed for legal review the same week, challenging the attempted amendment and presenting evidence, the forged signature, the recorded conversation, the timeline of events. My attorney recommended discreetly by Evelyn Markham moved fast. Then came the call. A major donor family, the Stantons, who had been with the Foundation since its inception, publicly withdrew their support from the board, led by Vivienne. They issued a polite but pointed statement. We support leadership that reflects not only vision, but integrity. The ripple effect was instant. Other donors paused their pledges. The board postponed its vote on the trust restructuring indefinitely. Declan went silent. My mother stopped returning calls. No press release went out, no announcement was made, but I knew the tide had shifted. The legacy they tried to weaponize was already rewriting itself, because legacy isn't built in spotlights or speeches. It's built in rooms where no one's watching, by people who choose to stay and do the work anyway. The ballroom felt smaller this time, simpler, no string quartet, no velvet ropes or gold-trimmed menus, just folding chairs, warm lights, and real stories echoing through the room. The first annual gala for the Elon Fund, named after my late husband Jeremy, wasn't about opulence. It was about purpose. In the 12 months since that night, everything had changed, and somehow nothing had. The Laughlin Foundation still operated, but its heartbeat was different now. The old guard had stepped back, if not voluntarily then, by the steady erosion of trust. Vivienne was no longer chair. She still appeared at carefully curated functions, smiling stiffly for photos, saying all the right things. But there was a glass wall now, even between her and her loyalists. She spoke through prepared statements and proxies. Her gaze rarely met mine. Declan returned to Singapore quietly in February, a job offer announced on LinkedIn, and never mentioned again. We hadn't spoken since the lawyer's letter confirming the nullification of the attempted amendment. He didn't fight it. Maybe he knew there wasn't anything left to salvage. Marisol and I kept building. The Frederick Laughlin Trust was thriving, but it was the Elon Fund that lit something inside me. It supported public school teachers, widows navigating sudden loss, and women rebuilding their lives outside the safety of pedigree. The very people Jeremy had always championed. Silas had changed too. At 14, he stood taller, spoke more clearly. Still observant, still quiet, but no longer hiding. Tonight, when I gently asked if he wanted to say a few words, he nodded. Just a short one. He stepped onto the stage in his navy blazer, his father's, and adjusted the microphone with the focus of someone who didn't want to waste a second. My name's Silas, he said. I used to think adults always knew what they were doing, but last year I saw some try to take everything from someone who deserved better. I saw someone stay quiet for too long. And then I saw her stop. And fight. And win. There was a silence in the room, not heavy, but full. He glanced toward me. So this fund is for people who do the work even when no one's clapping. Like my dad did. Like my mom still does. The applause was soft, sincere. No cameras clicked. No donor grins. Just the kind of clapping that makes you feel seen. As I watched my son step down and take his seat, his hand brushing mine, I felt something settle inside me, quiet and final. They tried to sign me out, quietly. But I was never just a name on paper. And neither is my son. If your voice was ever dismissed by the people who were supposed to love you, remember this: their silence isn't proof that you were wrong. Sometimes it takes the next generation to say what we couldn't. And sometimes the whisper that saves you doesn't come from a crowd, it comes from your own child. In a quiet moment when you're finally ready to hear it. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Sometimes being quiet isn't weakness, it's preparation. And when you finally speak, it echoes.
I stand at the polished mahogany podium, my hands gripping the edges so tightly my knuckles turn white. The scent of lilies hangs heavy in the air of Street Mary's Catholic Church, mingling with the musty perfume of old prayer books and candle wax. Every pew holds a familiar face, some streaked with tears, others watching me with naked skepticism. My grandmother's casket sits before the altar, draped in white roses. Lucia Rivera, the family matriarch, the keeper of traditions, and the only person who truly saw me. My index cards tremble between my fingers. I glance up to see Chelsea in the front row, her perfectly mascaraed eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. My parents sit beside her, Dad checking his watch, Mom dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief that hasn't caught a single tear. Ophelia, Father Dominguez prompts gently. Whenever you're ready. I clear my throat, the sound echoing through ancient speakers. Thank you for coming to honor my grandmother today. My voice sounds strange in my ears, too high. I take a breath and start again, lower this time. When I was 8 years old, Grandmother Lucia taught me to bake oatmeal raisin cookies. The memory unfolds in my mind, her kitchen warm with afternoon sunlight, the worn wooden spoon in my small hand, her wrinkled fingers guiding mine. Not chocolate chip, which every child prefers. Oatmeal raisin, because they were my grandfather's favorite before he passed. A few heads nod in recognition. She told me that love isn't always about what tastes sweetest to you. Sometimes it's about remembering what matters to someone else. My voice steadies as I continue. That afternoon, as we measured flour and counted raisins, she taught me more than a recipe. She taught me that the most profound acts of love often happen in ordinary moments. Across the church, Mrs. Perez from 3 doors down dabs her eyes. Even Uncle Robert, who rarely displays emotion, shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Grandmother Lucia lived by this principle every day of her 91 years. She remembered everyone's birthdays, anniversaries, and hardships. She kept a calendar filled with the important dates of people's lives, not because she had to, but because she believed that remembering matters. The silence in the church grows deeper. Several people nod in recognition. In her final weeks, when speaking became difficult, she asked me to read to her from that same recipe card, now yellowed with age. This, she whispered, is what remains when everything else falls away. The love we put into small things. I look up from my notes to find most of the congregation leaning forward. Even my father has stopped checking his watch. As we say goodbye to Lucia Rivera today, I hope we can all carry forward this lesson. That true wealth isn't measured in possessions but in the consistency of our care for one another. When I finish and step away from the podium, scattered applause breaks out, unusual for a funeral, but somehow fitting. Several people wipe tears as I walk back to my seat. My cheeks burn. My heart pounds against my ribs like it might break free. Mrs. Gonzalez from Grandmother's Garden Club reaches across the aisle to squeeze my hand. Only Chelsea's cold stare follows me, her lips curved in a smirk that says she knows something I don't. Later, I find a quiet corner of the reception hall, away from the buffet tables laden with casseroles and the clusters of relatives trading stories. The church basement smells of floor polish and coffee. I lean against the cool cinder block wall, letting my breathing slow. The memory I shared wasn't entirely truthful. Grandmother did teach me to bake cookies, but the conversation about love happened years later, when I was 23 and heartbroken over a job rejection. I combined the memories, polished them into something that captured her essence rather than the literal truth. The guilt of this small embellishment sits like a stone in my stomach. I close my eyes, remembering how grandmother's kitchen always smelled of cinnamon, and how her hands, though spotted with age, moved with such certainty. How different from my childhood home, where Chelsea's dance recitals and debate trophies dominated the mantel while my perfect attendance certificates disappeared into drawers. You have a librarian's soul, Grandmother once told me when I showed her my carefully organized bookshelf. Not a criticism like when my mother said I was too quiet to make an impression, but an observation of something valuable in me. Now she's gone, and the strange weight of being truly seen by someone has disappeared with her. Miss Rivera? I open my eyes to find a slender man in a charcoal suit standing before me, leather portfolio tucked under his arm. Yes? Henry Gutierrez. He extends his hand. I was your grandmother's attorney. My condolences for your loss. Lucia was a remarkable woman. Thank you. His handshake is firm, his eyes direct and intelligent. I need to speak with you about some matters concerning your grandmother's estate. Would you be able to come to my office tomorrow morning? Before I can answer, Chelsea materializes beside us, her black dress impeccably fitted, not a hair out of place despite the tears she dramatically shed during the service. What's this about? Party and Telech's 9. She interrupts, eyes darting between us. Ophelia? What did he want? Are you hiding something? I straighten my shoulders. Mr. Gutierrez is grandmother's attorney. He needs to discuss some paperwork with me. Why you? Chelsea's voice rises slightly. I spent more time with grandmother than anyone. Whatever this is about, I should be included. Mr. Gutierrez clears his throat. Miss Rivera, Chelsea, is it? I'll be contacting family members as needed for various matters. Right now, I need to speak with Ophelia specifically. I notice my parents hovering nearby, suddenly interested in my conversation when they've barely spoken to me all day. It's probably just paperwork. I say, surprised by the firmness in my voice. I'll handle it. Chelsea's eyes narrow. Since when do you handle anything important? 10 o'clock tomorrow, Miss Rivera, Mr. Gutierrez says to me, ignoring Chelsea's barb. My office is on Broadway, just past the old theater. As he walks away, Chelsea follows, already launching into a story about how close she and grandmother had been. My parents draw closer, Mom adjusting my collar like I'm still 12. What was that about? She asks, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. Just some documents to sign, I imagine, I answer, stepping back slightly. Dad frowns. Strange, he'd approach you directly. Your mother and I were her children, after all. Before I can respond, a warm voice calls my name. Marion, the head librarian where I work, approaches with arms outstretched. Her silver-streaked hair catches the fluorescent light, her sensible shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. Your speech was beautiful, she says, wrapping me in a hug that smells of lavender and book dust. Your grandmother would be proud. Over her shoulder, I watch my family retreat to the dessert table, huddled in conversation, their eyes occasionally flicking back to me. Thank you for coming. I tell Marion when we separate. It means a lot. She studies my face. Everything okay? Besides the obvious, of course. I have a choice. Brush it off, or confide in someone I trust. The weight of the day suddenly feels too heavy to carry alone. I'm not sure what's happening. I admit quietly, but something feels off. The family is acting stranger than usual, and grandmother's lawyer wants to meet with me specifically tomorrow. Marion squeezes my hand. Whatever it is, you can handle it. You've always been stronger than you think. Her confidence warms me, but as I watch Chelsea charm a group of distant cousins across the room, doubt creeps in. What could grandmother's lawyer possibly want with me specifically? What was grandmother planning that would make my family suddenly pay such close attention to the granddaughter they've overlooked for years? I need to find out what grandmother was planning. And why, after a lifetime of being invisible in my own family, I'm suddenly the center of attention. The next day, the law office of Henry Gutierrez occupies the second floor of a restored Victorian on Broadway, just past the old Majestic Theater. The waiting room smells of lemon polish and leather, with dark wood paneling that seems to absorb sound. A grandfather clock in the corner measures time with solemn precision, each tick reverberating through my chest. I smooth my skirt, a simple navy that suddenly feels inadequate, and check my watch. 9:53. I'm early, as usual. The receptionist, a woman with steel gray hair pulled into an elegant French twist, offers me water in a crystal glass. Mr. Gutierrez will be with you shortly, she says, her voice practiced and smooth. My phone buzzes with a text from Chelsea. What's happening? We have a right to know. I silence the phone without replying. When Henry emerges from his office, he looks exactly as he did at the funeral, impeccable charcoal suit, confident posture, eyes that miss nothing. Miss Rivera. Thank you for coming. He gestures toward his office. Please. His workspace is both impressive and intimidating, bookshelves laden with leather-bound volumes, a desk that could double as a dining table for 8, and windows that flood the room with morning light. He indicates a chair across from his desk, then sits behind it, creating a clear power dynamic between us. I apologize for the mystery yesterday. He begins, folding his hands. Your grandmother was very specific about how this process should unfold. Process? My voice sounds thin in the cavernous room. Henry opens a folder on his desk. I've been Lucia Rivera's attorney for 27 years. In that time, I've never met a sharper mind or a more deliberate planner. He extracts a document and slides it across the polished surface. This is your grandmother's will. The most recent version was executed 6 months ago. I look down at the legal document, its dense text swimming before my eyes. Your grandmother left her entire estate to you, Ophelia, $3 million in total assets. The room tilts. That's impossible. I assure you, It's not only possible, it's legally binding. Henry removes his glasses. What I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear, but Lucia insisted you understand everything. He pulls out another folder, thicker than the first. Your grandmother conducted what she called the final test over the last 5 years of her life. She deliberately tracked every interaction with family members who visited, when they visited, and most importantly, why they visited. He opens the folder to reveal meticulous records in my grandmother's careful handwriting. Dates, names, notes. Chelsea asked for money for a car down payment, I read from one entry. Robert and Elena requested loan for mortgage refinancing. Page after page documents requests my sister's college fund, my parents' retirement plans, vacations, home repairs. Each entry concludes with a dollar amount. These are loan requests? Some were positioned as loans. Most were simply requests for financial assistance. Henry's expression remains neutral. Your grandmother kept records of every phone call, every visit. She noted who came to see her without asking for money. He taps a section where my name appears repeatedly, without dollar amounts attached. Only you. My stomach clenches. I don't understand. Your grandmother underwent thorough neurological and psychological evaluations to establish her competence. He produces medical records. These confirm she was fully capable of making financial decisions. She anticipated the will might be contested. The implications crash over me like a wave. My family only visited when they wanted something. I'm afraid the evidence suggests that pattern, yes. I close my eyes, memories rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces finding new positions. Chelsea's perfect attendance at family dinners coinciding with her request for tuition money. My parents' sudden interest in grandmother's garden when their kitchen needed remodeling. They'll never accept this, I whisper, opening my eyes. They'll fight. Your grandmother expected that response. Henry's voice is matter of fact, neither judgmental nor sympathetic. She prepared accordingly. So. He shows me visitor logs from the nursing home where grandmother spent her final months. My name appears 3 times weekly. My parents and Chelsea show up once a month, usually before or after major expenses. But my parents always said I wasn't attentive enough. I say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears, that Chelsea was the perfect grandchild. People construct narratives that justify their behavior, Henry replies. Your consistent presence, without financial motivation, was precisely what Lucia valued most. The clock on Henry's wall marks 10:30. Half an hour has rewritten my entire understanding of my family. There's more you should know about your family's financial situation. Henry continues, producing yet another folder. Your parents took out a second mortgage 3 years ago. They have substantial credit card debt. He shows me financial records, obtained legally through discovery during the estate planning. My parents' precarious finances spread before me in stark black and white. Chelsea? I ask. Your sister maintains an expensive lifestyle. Designer clothes, European vacations. He slides across a printout of Chelsea's Instagram feed, champagne brunches, shopping bags from luxury stores, captions about living my best life. All funded by our parents? Henry nods. They've enabled her spending habits for years. They were counting on this inheritance to solve their financial problems. The realization hits me. They aren't cartoon villains twirling mustaches. They genuinely believed grandmother owed them support. The inheritance wasn't a pleasant surprise, but an expected solution to their mounting debts. They'll contest the will, Henry says, confirming my fears. They'll look for any weakness, claim Lucia was manipulated or mentally incompetent. Chelsea can be vindictive, I add quietly, remembering childhood scores settled with ruthless precision. Your grandmother anticipated this reaction. Henry's tone shifts, becoming more personal. Lucia hired me specifically to protect you, Ophelia. She knew this would be difficult. For the first time since entering his office, I feel tears threaten. Not from sadness or fear, but from the overwhelming realization that grandmother had seen everything clearly, the family dynamics, the financial motivations, my isolation within my own family. You're not alone in this, Henry continues. Moses Henderson, your grandmother's neighbor, was a witness to the will signing. He's known your family for decades and can testify to Lucia's mental state and intentions. Moses? The name conjures an image of the kind elderly man who always waved from his porch when I visited grandmother. He's aware of your family history and is prepared to support you. Henry explains. I know the legal strategy we'll need to employ. Between Moses's personal knowledge and the documentation Lucia prepared, we have substantial resources. I look again at the will. At my grandmother's signature, firm and clear, just like her intentions. Lucia prepared for every possibility, Henry says, gathering the documents into neat piles. She was determined that her final wishes be respected. The grandfather clock chimes 11. In just 1 hour, my understanding of my family has been completely upended. The patterns of neglect and favoritism weren't just in my imagination. The disappointment over my career choice wasn't about the library, it was about money. Chelsea's perfect grandchild act was performance, not love. Yet beneath the shock and betrayal, something else stirs a strange sense of validation. Grandmother had seen the truth. She had valued my visits, my simple company without demands or expectations. In a lifetime of feeling invisible, she had seen me clearly. What happens now? I ask, my voice steadier than I expect. We prepare, Henry says simply. Lucia gave us everything we need to honor her wishes. Now we just need to be as strategic as she was. Outside the window, San Antonio continues its morning bustle, unaware that my world has just been completely transformed. The next morning, the morning of the will reading, brings a knot to my stomach as I enter Henry's office. The reception area fills with my family, the air thick with tension and cologne. My mother adjusts her pearl necklace while Dad checks his watch for the 3rd time. Chelsea sits with perfect posture, scrolling through her phone with manicured nails, occasionally glancing up to study me with narrowed eyes. Henry appears in the doorway, leather portfolio tucked under his arm. Thank you all for coming. Please follow me to the conference room. We file in like soldiers to a court-martial. The conference room feels both grand and suffocating with its mahogany table and leather chairs. A pitcher of water sits untouched in the center, sunlight streaming through Venetian blinds creating prison bar shadows across the polished surface. Before we begin, Henry says, placing his portfolio on the table, I need to share some additional documentation Lucia left in my possession. He removes a leather-bound journal with a faded red cover. This is your grandmother's visitor log. She documented every family visit for the past 5 years. My father leans forward. That seems unnecessary. We visited Mother regularly. Did you? Henry opens the journal, revealing pages of meticulous handwriting. According to her records, the pattern of visits is quite revealing. The room falls silent as Henry turns the pages. Each entry includes dates, times, and detailed notes about conversations. My stomach tightens as I notice a pattern emerging. January 15th, Henry reads. Chelsea visited. Asked for $3,000 for spring break trip to Cancun. Brought store-bought cookies she claimed to bake herself. Chelsea's face flushes. Grandma offered to help. Henry continues without acknowledging her. February 8th. Robert and Susan visited. Asked about second mortgage options. Suggested I consider selling the house. My parents shift uncomfortably. Dad's jaw tightens. March 30th. Ophelia visited. Brought library books and fresh groceries. Fixed loose cabinet in kitchen. Asked for nothing. Henry looks up. This pattern continues throughout. I notice dates circled in red ink. Squinting at the open pages, I see the connection. Those dates, I say, pointing to the red circles, they match exactly with family financial troubles. The day Chelsea crashed her car. When Dad's business partner left. When Mom needed dental surgery. Henry nods approvingly. Lucia was quite observant. He returns the journal to his portfolio and pulls out a document. Now, to the will itself. It was signed by Lucia Rivera 3 months ago, with 2 independent witnesses present. He slides a medical evaluation across the table. This confirms Lucia was of sound mind when making these decisions. The evaluation was performed by Dr. William Barkley, a respected neurologist who specialized in geriatric care. My family stares at the document like it might bite them. I feel a strange sense of power seeing the evidence laid out so clearly. Grandmother hadn't just made a decision. She'd built an airtight case. Henry clears his throat. To the matter of the will. Lucia Rivera has left her entire estate, including the house on Magnolia Street, all financial accounts, and personal belongings, to her granddaughter Ophelia Rivera. The estate is valued at approximately $3 million. The silence lasts exactly 2 seconds before erupting into chaos. This is absurd. Chelsea jumps to her feet, face contorted with rage. She made up that eulogy to look good. She was barely there for Grandma. My mother's hand trembles as she points at me. You manipulated a sick old woman. Your own grandmother. We're contesting this immediately, Dad announces, pulling out his phone. I'm calling our attorney. Grandmother knew exactly what she was doing, I say, my voice steadier than I expected. The words rise from somewhere deep inside me, a place I barely recognized existed. She documented everything. She saw everything. My father's face reddens. This will won't stand in court. Mother was 91 years old. She couldn't possibly have understood. The will has already been filed in probate court, Henry interrupts calmly. You're welcome to contest it, but I should warn you that the process could take months. Lucia anticipated this reaction and prepared accordingly. Her documentation is extensive. Chelsea grabs her purse, nearly knocking over her chair. You won't get away with this, Ophelia. We all know who you really are, a nobody who couldn't even finish college without Grandma's money. That's enough, Chelsea, I say, not raising my voice but not backing down either. Something has shifted within me. For the first time in my life, I don't feel small in their presence. My parents exchange glances, a silent conversation I've witnessed 1,000 times but never been included in. They stand in unison. This isn't over, my mother announces, smoothing her skirt. Not by a long shot. They storm out, Chelsea trailing behind with one final venomous glare. The door slams so hard the water in the pitcher ripples. In the sudden quiet, I realize I'm still sitting straight, shoulders back, breathing normally. My hands aren't trembling. I haven't apologized once. Henry sits down across from me. Your grandmother prepared everything. She knew exactly how they would react. The door opens again, and an elderly black man in a crisp button-down shirt enters. His silver hair contrasts with dark skin, and he walks with a dignity that suggests years of standing his ground. Moses, Henry says, standing to shake the man's hand. Thank you for coming. Moses Henderson nods at me. Miss Ophelia, my condolences about Lucia. Moses was one of the witnesses who signed your grandmother's will, Henry explains. He's lived next door to her for 30 years. Lucia asked me specifically, Moses says, settling into a chair with the careful movements of age. She knew what might happen after she was gone. Was she? I hesitate, voicing the fear Chelsea planted. Was she fully aware when she signed? They'll claim she wasn't. Moses chuckles, a warm sound that fills the room. Young lady, Lucia Rivera was sharp as a tack right until the end. Mine like a steel trap. She knew exactly what she wanted and why. Relief floods through me. Thank you for telling me. But she talked about you, you know. Moses leans forward, elbows on the table. Not often Lucia wasn't one for idle chatter, but when she did, there was pride in her voice. My throat tightens. Really? She'd mentioned books you recommended. How you fixed things around the house without being asked. Small things, but important ones. His dark eyes, clear despite his age, hold mine steadily. Young lady, I know she truly loved you. The simple statement hits me with unexpected force. Not the inheritance, not the victory over my family, but this confirmation that grandmother's love had been real. This is what makes tears spring to my eyes. I loved her too, I managed to say. Henry clears his throat. We have a strong case, Ophelia. The documentation is impeccable, but your family won't give up easily. I look between these two men, strangers days ago, allies now, and feel something unfamiliar taking root. Not just confidence, but a sense that I'm not facing this alone. Can I really stand up to them after all these years? The question slips out before I can stop it. Moses smiles, revealing a gold tooth that catches the sunlight. Lucia thought so, and that woman was rarely wrong about people. I nod, straightening the papers before me with steady hands. For the first time since grandmother died, I feel certain of my path forward. The battle has just begun, but I'm no longer afraid of the fight. I place another legal tome on the growing stack beside me, rub my tired eyes, and check the time. 7:43 p.m. 3 days after the will reading, and I've barely left this conference room in Henry's office. Undue influence requires proof that I isolated grandmother from the family. I say, underlining a passage with my finger. They visited her, though not often. That argument won't stand. Every teen. I dear Alfred met her word. Henry nods, his expression carefully neutral as he reviews documents across the polished oak table. His tie is loosened, sleeves rolled to the elbows. Good observation. They'll likely argue diminished capacity instead. But we have Dr. Ramirez's evaluation from just 2 months ago. I tap another folder. Perfect cognitive scores. True, but Chelsea might claim the evaluation was done at your request. I look up sharply. I never asked for an evaluation. I know that. Lucia requested it herself, anticipating this exact situation. Henry removes his glasses, polishing them with a handkerchief. But perception matters in probate court. We need to prepare for every angle of attack. I exhale slowly, setting aside emotions that threaten to bubble up during the will reading. This isn't about feelings anymore, this is strategy. Chess, not checkers. What about the journal? I ask. Powerful evidence, but they'll call it hearsay. Henry replaces his glasses, his expression sharpening. We need additional corroboration. This methodical approach feels foreign to me, the girl who spent her life avoiding confrontation, who rearranged her own needs to accommodate family harmony. Yet here I am, analyzing legal precedents like battle plans. I've been reading about contestation statistics. I tell him, opening another book. Most challenges fail when proper documentation exists. Henry's eyebrow rises slightly. You've been doing homework. I need to understand what we're facing. The words come out firmer than I expect. This isn't just about money, it's about respecting grandmother's wishes. Your grandmother would be impressed. Henry sorts documents into neat piles. Most people in your position would be emotional, reactive. You're thinking like someone who wants to win. Outside, San Antonio traffic hums. The world continues while I transform from overlooked librarian to someone who might actually prevail against her family. Let's assess their potential moves. Henry uncaps a pen. Your parents might claim they expected support in retirement. Chelsea could argue promises were made regarding her graduate school. I open my laptop, pulling up my research notes. I've documented every social media post where Chelsea mentioned grandmother's money. There are 17 references in the past year alone. Henry smiles, a brief flash of approval. Good. And I've prepared affidavits from Lucia's bridge club members who witnessed Chelsea's behavior at holiday gatherings. The conference room door opens, and Moses enters carrying a cardboard box. Despite his 78 years, he moves with purpose, setting the box on the table. Found these while cleaning out my garage. He pats the box. Birthday cards Lucia sent me over the years. She often mentioned your visits, Ophelia. How you never asked for anything, just brought books you thought she'd enjoy. I blink back unexpected tears. You kept all these? Course I did. Moses straightens his cardigan. Lucia and I were neighbors for 40 years. We talked almost daily. I heard plenty about your family's financial requests. I think about grandmother's meticulous nature, how she saved every receipt, documented every interaction. The realization dawns that she wasn't just being organized, she was building a case. Henry examines the cards. These strengthen our position. They show Lucia's consistent affection for Ophelia over years, not a sudden decision. Moses nods. Lucia knew what she was doing, leaving everything to you. Said you were the only one who saw her as a person, not a bank account. I pull my library colleague Rachel's research notes from my bag. Rachel helped me compile precedents on similar will contests. She worked in legal documentation before becoming a librarian. As we organize our defenses, I realize we're creating something formidable, a fortress of evidence and testimony that will protect what grandmother intended. Not through emotional appeals, but through systematic preparation. We should document any contact attempts your family makes, Henry advises. Every text, call, or encounter. Classed Henry. The room falls quiet as we work, the only sounds being the shuffle of papers and occasional keyboard clicks. The anxiety that gripped me at the funeral has transformed into something steadier, a calm determination. My phone buzzes. Chelsea. I show Henry the screen before answering and putting it on speaker. Hello? Think you've won? Chelsea's voice fills the room, sharp with venom. Meet me at the library tomorrow. I'll prove you're just a lucky fraud. The line goes dead before I can respond. Henry and Moses exchange glances. They're escalating. Henry says quietly. She cornered me at work last time. I wouldn't give her money for a trip to Cancun, I explain. Created a scene in front of patrons. A spark of anger ignites in my chest. Not the familiar, helpless frustration, but something clearer. They're willing to damage my professional reputation over this. We'll document the encounter, Henry assures me. This actually helps our case, demonstrates their pattern of intimidation. I nod, squaring my shoulders. They won't intimidate me into giving up. The words hang in the air, a declaration that surprises even me with its certainty. For the first time, I believe them. The next morning, I arrange the stack of documents Henry prepared into a neat pile on my coffee table. Lists of dates, bank statements, medical reports. Oh, wah. The physical evidence of my grandmother's intentions and my family's manipulations. Moses sits across from me, his weathered hands carefully organizing a timeline of visits to grandmother's house. This should help establish the pattern, he says, tapping a yellow legal pad filled with his meticulous handwriting. Every time your sister visited, It was within 3 days of requesting money. I nod, scanning his notes. She always brought those fancy cupcakes from the bakery on Broadway, the ones grandmother couldn't even eat because of her diabetes. Moses chuckles. But your parents certainly enjoyed them. A knock at the door interrupts us. Marian enters carrying a manila envelope. I got those character references you asked for. She hands me the envelope. 5 colleagues vouched for your integrity without hesitation. Even Director Patterson wrote one. And you know how he feels about personal matters. I take the envelope, warmth spreading through my chest. For years, I believed my worth was measured by my family's approval. Now I discover support from unexpected corners. Thank you, this means more than I can say. Marian squeezes my shoulder before sitting beside Moses. Any word from Henry about the hearing date? Not yet. I open my laptop to check my email. He wants everything in order before we proceed. Says we need to be methodical. My phone buzzes with a text from Janice, another librarian. Have you seen Chelsea's Facebook post? Call me. Oh. Cold dread pools in my stomach. I open Facebook on my laptop and find Chelsea's profile. Her latest post sits at the top of her page, with 27 comments already. Some people will do anything for money, even lie at their own grandmother's funeral. My sister manipulated our grandmother with weekly visits while spreading lies about our family. Now she's trying to steal what belongs to all of us. The real Ophelia Rivera never cared about grandmother until there was money involved. Family betrayal. The real truth. Marian gasps, reading over my shoulder. That's outrageous. My hands shake as I scroll through comments. Most are from Chelsea's friends expressing shock and offering support, but several are from community members who attended the funeral. I thought that eulogy seemed rehearsed. Always the quiet ones you have to watch. Such a shame when money tears families apart. Moses leans forward, jaw tight. This is desperate nonsense. Pay it no mind. But I can't ignore it. These are people I see at the grocery store, the library, church. People who watched me grow up. Now they're reading lies about me, forming judgments based on Chelsea's twisted version of events. My phone buzzes again. A text from my father. Split the inheritance equally and this will all go away. Think about what you're doing to this family. Text. The audacity steals my breath. I set my phone face down on the table. Is it worth it? I whisper, more to myself than my companions, standing firm while they destroy my reputation. Moses straightens in his chair. Your grandmother knew this would happen. That's precisely why she documented everything. But what if people believe her? What about my job? The library board reads these posts too. Marian takes my hand. The people who matter know who you are, Ophelia. As for the rest, she shrugs. Truth outlasts gossip. My laptop chimes with an email notification from Henry. The subject line reads, Probate hearing scheduled, 2 weeks. I open it with trembling fingers. Henry confirms the date, adding, all documentation is prepared. I've engaged a reputation management specialist to address the social media situation. Do not respond directly to any posts or contact your family. Forward everything to me. Moses reads the email and nods approvingly. Henry knows what he's doing. Remember, your grandmother chose him specifically. A second email arrives minutes later with a digital copy of grandmother's medical evaluation from 3 months ago, then 2 months ago, completed by 2 separate physicians. The conclusion stands out in bold. The patient demonstrates excellent cognitive function for her age. No signs of impairment or undue influence detected. We have everything we need to prevail, Moses says, his voice steady with quiet confidence. The truth stands firm against lies. I look around my small living room, now transformed into a strategic command center. 3 weeks ago, I was the overlooked granddaughter who visited an elderly woman out of genuine affection. Now I'm preparing for a legal battle against my own family, while defending my character in the court of public opinion. Yet something has shifted inside me. Where panic might have once overwhelmed me, I feel an unfamiliar calm. My family's attacks no longer surprise me. Their desperation confirms what grandmother knew all along, that their affection was conditional, their visits transactional. I close my laptop and straighten the papers once more. 2 weeks, I say. Let's make sure we're ready. Thing. For the first time since this began, I feel neither fear nor doubt. Only a quiet determination to honor my grandmother's final wish. After diminution, to recognize my own worth, even when others try to diminish it. 2 days later, Henry's office seems smaller today, the walls closing in as he unfolds a crisp letter bearing the letterhead of Wallace and Thornton, attorneys at law. Morning sunlight streams through Venetian blinds, casting tiger stripes across the document that threatens everything. They've hired Gerald Thornton, Henry says, his usually composed voice tight with concern. He specializes in contesting wills, particularly those with, he adjusts his glasses, questionable circumstances. My throat constricts. What exactly are they claiming? Undue influence. Henry lays the letter flat on his polished mahogany desk. They're alleging you manipulated your grandmother during her final years, using your regular visits to poison her against the family. The accusation hits like a physical blow. My hands curl into fists in my lap. They've requested an emergency probate hearing. Henry continues. Thornton is good, calculated, precise. He's framing this as concern for Lucia's legacy rather than their own financial interests. How can they twist things like this? The words scrape my throat. I never asked grandmother for anything. Precisely why this is so dangerous, Henry says. They're not claiming you extorted her. They're suggesting something more insidious, that you presented yourself as the dutiful granddaughter, while systematically turning her against her own children. I picture Chelsea's perfectly composed face, the mask of concern she must have worn when talking to their new attorney. My father checking his watch, my mother dabbing dry eyes at the funeral. The performance of grief that fooled no one who truly knew Lucia. Look at this. Henry slides over a printed Facebook post. It's from my mother's account, a carefully worded message expressing deep concern for dear Lucia's final wishes and heartbreak over possible manipulation of an elderly woman's trust. My stomach turns. They're making me sound like some kind of predator. And they're being smart about it, Henry says. No obvious greed, no public tantrums, just concerned family members worried about an elderly relative's vulnerable state. He pulls out more documents, screenshots from Chelsea's Instagram showing carefully selected photos of her with grandmother at family gatherings, captions lamenting cherished moments and honoring true intentions. They're rewriting history, I whisper, the truth of it settling cold in my chest. They've already gathered support from certain neighbors. Henry's mouth tightens. The Wilsons next door, the Harveys from across the street. People who saw Chelsea's occasional holiday visits but never witnessed your regular Tuesday afternoons reading to Lucia. The phone on Henry's desk buzzes. His secretary's voice comes through the speaker. Mr. Gutierrez, Judge Ramirez has scheduled the emergency hearing for Thursday at 9 a.m. 3 days, not 2 weeks as previously planned. I breathe when Henry ends the call. Henry stands, straightening his tie. Time to activate everything we've prepared. Within hours, our counteroffensive moves with the precision of a military operation. 3 months of strategic preparation deployed simultaneously. Henry sends comprehensive documentation to the court medical evaluations, proving Lucia's mental acuity, visitor logs from the nursing home, testimonials from staff. Moses arrives at Henry's office by noon, leaning heavily on his cane but with fire in his eyes. Those vultures, he mutters, shaking his head. I've written down every conversation I overheard between Lucia and your parents these past 5 years. Every demand for money, every guilt trip about her responsibilities to fund Chelsea's lifestyle. Marion from the library coordinates character references from colleagues. We're addressing the reputation issue head-on, she tells me over speakerphone. 8 letters from community members who've known you for years, testifying to your integrity and character. By afternoon, Henry has arranged for Lucia's primary physician to provide a sworn statement. Dr. Sandoval conducted quarterly cognitive assessments. Henry explains. Your grandmother scored remarkably well, even 2 weeks before her passing. I watch this machinery of defense with quiet amazement. For years, I navigated life avoiding waves, stepping carefully around everyone else's feelings and needs. Now an army mobilizes on my behalf, fighting for what Lucia intended. My phone buzzes with a text from Chelsea. You could stop this if you wanted. Even split. That's all we're asking. I set the phone face down without responding. By evening, we gather in Henry's conference room. Henry, Moses, Marion, and 2 of grandmother's nurses. The wall is covered with documents. A timeline of the family's history with Lucia. My modest apartment couldn't have contained this operation. They'll call character witnesses. Henry explains. Former church members, distant relatives who'll claim Lucia mentioned different plans for her estate. But we have the signed will, I say. We do. Henry nods. But Thornton will argue you exerted undue influence during a period when Lucia was vulnerable. Moses snorts. Vulnerable? That woman could calculate compound interest faster than my smartphone right up until the end. One of the nurses, Betsy, laughs. She beat me at chess the week before she passed. Henry adds, Judge Ramirez will determine if there's sufficient cause to delay probate. If he rules in their favor, the estate could be tied up for years. The stakes crystallize in my mind. This isn't just about money, it's about Lucia's final wishes, her deliberate choice, the truth of our relationship. When I return home that night, Moses insists on walking me to my door despite the pain in his knees. You know, he says as we reach my apartment, Lucia told me once that you reminded her of herself, quiet on the outside, steel on the inside. On Thursday, we show them what that steel looks like. His words stay with me as I spread documents across my kitchen table, reviewing testimony, preparing for cross-examination. The night grows late, but sleep remains distant. I rehearse responses, anticipate accusations. My phone lights up with a text from Henry. Lucia planned for this exact scenario. Trust the preparation. Thursday morning comes too quickly. I dress carefully in a simple navy suit, professional, understated, nothing that suggests wealth or entitlement. As I fasten a small silver pendant Lucia gave me for my 25th birthday, I catch my reflection. The woman looking back at me stands straighter than the one who delivered a nervous eulogy just months ago. The woman in the mirror knows what's at stake, not just millions of dollars, but the truth of who Lucia Rivera was and what she truly valued. My phone rings. Henry's voice comes through clear and confident. Cars waiting downstairs. It's time. I take one last look at the scattered papers, the battle plan for tomorrow's confrontation. Everything that's been building since that day in the church, when Chelsea's cold stare followed me from the podium. This is the point of no return. I'm ready, I tell Henry. And for the first time, I truly am. That same morning, the county probate courtroom smells of furniture polish and institutional air conditioning. I sit at a polished oak table beside Henry, my hands folded in my lap to stop them from shaking. The gleaming wood surfaces reflect the overhead fluorescent lights, casting the whole room in a clinical glow that makes even the judge's dark wooden bench look sterile. My family sits across the narrow center aisle, Chelsea's hair styled in an elegant updo, my mother in a somber navy dress with pearl earrings, the ones grandmother gave her for her 40th birthday. My father's silver gray suit looks freshly pressed, his expression calibrated to concern rather than angry. Their attorney arranges documents with the precision of a surgeon preparing instruments. All rise. The bailiff announces as Judge Ramirez enters, a woman in her 60s with silver hair cut in a practical bob and reading glasses perched on her nose. After the formalities, their attorney rises first, buttoning his suit jacket. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of undue influence. Lucia Rivera was a beloved matriarch who, in her declining years, fell victim to manipulation by her granddaughter, Ophelia. My stomach tightens. The audacity of his claim lands like a physical blow. Miss Rivera systematically isolated her grandmother from other family members. Lawyer Thornton continues, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of a seasoned litigator. She cultivated dependence while the deceased was vulnerable. The result was this highly unusual will that disinherits Miss Rivera's parents, Lucia's own son, and her younger sister. Thornton gestures to my family. The Riveras simply want what their mother and grandmother intended before she fell under influence. They're not asking for anything beyond what family tradition and Lucia's own statement suggested would happen. My mother dabs at dry eyes with a handkerchief. Chelsea nods solemnly. The performance is flawless, concerned family members looking out for an elderly woman's true wishes, not greedy relatives after money. The evidence will show, Thornton concludes, that this will represents Ophelia Rivera's wishes, not Lucia Rivera's. When Henry stands, he doesn't match Thornton's theatrical style. His movements are measured, his voice steady. Your Honor, the respondent has presented a compelling story. Unfortunately for them, it's fiction. He lifts a thick binder. What's not fiction is this documentation spanning 15 years. He walks the binder to the judge's bench. This contains visitor logs from Lucia Rivera's retirement community, signed by security guards. These logs show that while Ophelia visited her grandmother weekly for years, her parents and sister only appeared when they needed money. Thornton jumps up. Objection. Counsel is making accusations without foundation. I'm establishing pattern and motive, Henry responds calmly. And I have the foundation right here. He returns to our table and lifts another binder. Financial records showing 17 separate occasions where Chelsea and her parents requested substantial sums from Lucia Rivera, followed by periods of no contact until the next financial need arose. Financial maze of the syndigators say. The judge accepts the second binder, flipping through pages with a deepening frown. Most revealing, Henry continues, are Mrs. Rivera's own journals, where she documented her concerns about her family's motivations. He produces a leather-bound notebook. I'd like to read one entry from September 12th, 3 years ago. My father shifts uncomfortably. Chelsea's perfect composure cracks as she whispers furiously to Porter. Henry reads, Robert called again about the lake house down payment. When I mentioned I'd already helped with Chelsea's tuition this year, he said I owed it to them since I'm sitting on a fortune. Only Ophelia visits without her hand out. Perhaps she's the only one who sees me as more than a bank account. The courtroom falls silent. My first witness is Moses Henderson, his weathered hands gripping his cane as he takes the oath. Moses settles into the witness chair, his eyes clear despite his 87 years. Mr. Henderson, how long did you know Lucia Rivera? Henry asks. 30 years. We were neighbors at Shady Oaks Retirement Village. And did you ever observe Ophelia isolating her grandmother from family? Moses chuckles. Just the opposite. Many times I heard Lucia on the phone asking her son and his family to visit. Ophelia would encourage her to keep trying. And were you present when Lucia decided to change her will? I was. She invited me for coffee that morning, said she had important business and wanted a friend there. Was she of sound mind? Sharp as they come, Moses says, tapping his temple. We'd just finished our weekly chess match, which she won, mind you. She explained exactly why she was making the change. Said it wasn't about punishment, but about rewarding genuine love. Thornton's cross-examination tries to suggest Moses is confused or biased, but the old man remains unflappable, recounting specific dates and conversations with remarkable clarity. My library director Marion follows, testifying to my character and work ethic. Then comes Dr. Ramirez, grandmother's physician, who presents medical evaluations showing Lucia's mental acuity remained exceptional until her final days. By the time we break for lunch, I notice the judge watching my family with increasing skepticism. Their perfectly coordinated, concerned expressions have begun to seem rehearsed rather than genuine. When court resumes, Thornton calls my mother to the stand. Mrs. Rivera, did your mother ever express concerns about Ophelia's influence over her? My mother's voice catches. She became so different in those last years. When we'd visit, she'd seem distant, preoccupied. Sometimes she'd mention things Ophelia had told her about us that simply weren't true. Henry's objection to this hearsay is sustained. The judge instructs my mother to stick to facts, not speculation about what grandmother might have been thinking. Chelsea testifies next, presenting herself as the devoted granddaughter who simply couldn't visit as often due to her demanding career. Grandmother always told me I was following in her footsteps, she claims, her voice catching perfectly on cue. We shared a special bond. Henry stands for cross-examination. Miss Rivera, when was the last time you visited your grandmother before she passed away? Chelsea hesitates. I'm not sure of the exact date. Henry consults a document. The visitor logs show it was 4 months before her death, on June 3rd. Do you recall the purpose of that visit? Chelsea shifts uncomfortably. To see her, of course. I'd like to enter Exhibit 14. Henry says, passing a paper to the judge. This is a text message from the defendant to Lucia Rivera sent the day before that visit, asking for $7,000 for a trip to Barcelona. The color drains from Chelsea's face. By late afternoon, Thornton's case had crumbled. What seemed like a coordinated, reasonable challenge now looks like a desperate grab for money by family members who had treated grandmother like an ATM. The judge removes her reading glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose before addressing the courtroom. I've reviewed the evidence thoroughly, and I find no grounds to invalidate Lucia Rivera's will. The documentation shows a pattern consistent with a woman of sound mind, making a deliberate choice based on years of observation. She turns toward my family. The evidence suggests that Miss Ophelia Rivera was the only family member who demonstrated consistent care without financial motivation. The will stands as written. Chelsea's composure shatters. This isn't fair, she shouts, rising from her seat. She was manipulated. Ophelia never deserved to be her favorite. That's enough, the judge says sharply. One more outburst and I'll find you in contempt. Furthermore, I'm ordering the plaintiffs to pay all legal costs associated with this frivolous contest. She looks directly at my parents. Any further harassment of the defendant could result in additional legal consequences. This matter is closed. The gavel strikes with finality. As we exit the courtroom, Moses catches up to us in the hallway, tears glistening in his eyes. Lucia would be so pleased, he says, patting my hand. She knew exactly what would happen. She told me once that sometimes people need to face consequences to grow. Henry organizes his briefcase, satisfaction evident in his precise movements. Justice has been served exactly as your grandmother intended. He says, the estate will be transferred to your name within 30 days. Through the window, I watch my family hurry to their car, heads bowed, Chelsea still wiping angry tears from her cheeks. For the first time, they look small to me, diminished not by their defeat but by the revelation of who they truly are. A strange calm settles over me. The inheritance is secure, but more importantly, I understand now what grandmother tried to teach me through her recipes, her stories, her quiet affection. Value isn't measured in dollars but in the consistent care we offer one another without expectation of return. The courtroom empties around us, but witnesses from the neighborhood linger, several approaching to congratulate me. Mrs. Gonzalez from the garden club embraces me. Your grandmother spoke so highly of you, she whispers. Now I see why. In that moment, standing in the echoing courthouse hallway, I realize the true victory isn't the money or even the vindication. It's the knowledge that I was truly seen by someone who mattered. And in her seeing me, she helped me finally see myself. 6 months after the probate hearing, I park in my usual spot at the San Antonio Public Library and check my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back bears little resemblance to the nervous librarian who once trembled while delivering her grandmother's eulogy. Same hazel eyes behind wire frames, same brown hair tucked behind my ears, but the hesitation that once shadowed my face has vanished. The courthouse victory changed more than my bank account. Chelsea removed her vicious social media posts within hours of the judge's ruling. My parents stopped appearing at community events where they might encounter me. Their retreat wasn't graceful, but it was complete. Mrs. Gonzalez from Grandmother's Garden Club catches me walking toward the library entrance. Ophelia. Just the person I wanted to see. Her weathered hands grip mine. Those planters you donated for the community garden are blooming beautifully. Lucia would be so proud. Thank you, I say, no longer flinching at the mention of my grandmother. The garden was important to her. And to you, Mrs. Gonzalez says, squeezing my hand. You know, I misjudged the situation with your family. Many of us did. I should have known better. I smile. We all did what we thought was right at the time. In my office, I sort through grant applications for the new literacy program. The first thing I did after paying off my student loans was establish a foundation in grandmother's name. The second was purchasing a modest craftsman bungalow 3 blocks from the library. No mansion, no sports car choices that bewildered my colleagues who imagined what they would do with millions. Morning, boss. Marian pokes her head in, her silver-streaked hair catching the morning light. Moses is here with more stories. Moses Henderson has become a regular visitor, bringing memories of my grandmother that add richness to the portrait I already carried. Today, he sits across from my desk, his cane propped against the chair. Your grandmother once told me the best investment she ever made was in people, not stocks. Moses says, his voice warm with memory. Seems you inherited that wisdom along with everything else. I had an excellent teacher, I reply. Henry says the foundation paperwork will be finalized next week. Henry, now my permanent financial advisor, helped me structure the inheritance to secure both my future and grandmother's legacy. His guidance proved invaluable in navigating my new responsibilities. Lucia gave you more than money. Moses observes. She gave you confidence. I see it in the way you walk, the way you speak. No more hiding in corners. The transformation feels both subtle and seismic. Where I once second-guessed every decision, I now trust my instincts. When the board unanimously voted me head librarian last month, I accepted without questioning whether I deserved it. The promotion came with challenges, but I faced them without the familiar companion of doubt. Later that afternoon, I visit the cemetery. Autumn leaves scatter across the grounds as I place fresh white roses on grandmother's grave. Unlike my early visits filled with tears and questions, I now bring updates, sharing news of the Foundation's progress and the community programs we've launched. The Senior Companionship Initiative starts next month. I tell her, adjusting the flowers. Moses agreed to serve as program advisor. He says it's about helping people recognize true kindness. The wind rustles the trees overhead. In this peaceful setting, the bitterness of the court battle feels distant. I no longer dwell on Chelsea's cutting remarks, or my parents' attempts to invalidate the will. Their actions revealed truths I needed to see, painful as they were. Our family contact remains minimal, occasional text messages, a birthday card. But last week, A tentative coffee meeting with my father showed the slightest crack in his pride. He mentioned a community art show without once bringing up the inheritance. Back at the library, I find Amanda, our newest librarian, frantically reorganizing a cart of misplaced returns. Her frustration explodes when she knocks over a carefully sorted stack. "This is impossible!" she snaps, her voice sharp enough to draw attention from nearby patrons. "Nobody respects the system. Why do I even bother?" 6 months ago, I might have retreated from her anger, taking it personally. Today, I see beyond her words to the overwhelming pressure beneath. The hardest people to love often need it most. I say, kneeling to help gather the scattered books. "Take a break. I'll finish this." Her shoulders drop. "I'm sorry. It's not the books. My mother's health is declining and I'm trying to arrange home care from 3 states away." "My grandmother struggled with the same issue before moving to assisted living," I tell her. "I have some resources that might help. Let's talk after your shift." This interaction, this ability to remain steady in the face of another's distress, marks the most profound change in me. Grandmother's true gift wasn't the money. It was teaching me to recognize the value of compassion, especially when it's difficult to give. That evening, my phone buzzes with a text message. My mother's name appears on the screen, sending a familiar flutter of anxiety through my chest, but it settles quickly. Her message reads, "Would you consider joining us for Christmas dinner this year?" I stare at the words, remembering holidays filled with tension and unspoken resentments, but also remembering the oatmeal raisin cookies grandmother taught me to bake, and her gentle wisdom about love not always being what tastes sweetest to you. Perhaps it's time for us all to sit down and see each other as family again. Not because the past didn't happen, but because Lucia Rivera taught me that true inheritance isn't counted in dollars. It's measured in the courage to offer kindness where it hasn't always been returned. I text back, "I'd like that. Should I bring dessert?"